Welcome to Bizruptions, a video podcast where we talk about the ish that happens along the road to business success and how to keep pushing through it. And now, from the Yokel Local Studios in lovely Las Vegas, with your Think Out of the Box hosts, Stormie Andrews and Borah Fortune Stott.
I can't believe it. We made it another week, and Borah is still part of this show.
I love the crickets. That's awesome.
Thank you. That was me adding that.
Well, that's Stormie's sense of humor. I love that.
So, well, we are here today with another show, and as Stormie said, he is still here. Whatever. But we have a really exciting show today.
Yeah, I'm really excited for today.
So here's the thing. Most people, Stormie, would rather run into a burning building than to do what our guest does for a living, what he teaches people to do. And he's really, really good at it. I mean, he even taught you to do it a little bit.
I misunderstood. When you said most people would run into a burning building, I really thought you were going to go that most people would rather run into a burning building than spend 5 minutes with you. But you went in a completely different direction. My
completely
bad.
different direction. Anyways, our guest, Stormie digresses. Our guest today is the phenomenal Darren LaCroix.
World champion,
AS, CSP. So Darren's going to tell us what those mean because a lot of us don't know. But here's the thing is Darren has a phenomenal underdog story because a lot of us think that we're in this place where we can't improve ourselves or we couldn't do certain things on stage. And we really don't know the value, no matter what business it is, what business you're in, that this skill set helps on. And Darren, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you with us today. And despite Stormie being here, I appreciate you.
Welcome, Darren. It is so good to have you here. I'm really excited for today's episode.
Are we 20 minutes into the show already?
Show's over. Thanks for being here,
talk?
Darren. Show's over. Thanks for joining us, folks.
There you go.
Thanks. It was fun.
I have to make sure. See, Stormie is notorious. For those of you who are listening to us on iTunes or in the Google store or something, Stormie is notorious for turning on the video on just him. So let me make sure that we're all being seen because this is also a video show.
I can confirm we're all being seen. So let Darren dive in because I know there's some people listening listening now. Darren has a ton of fans out there that I'm sure that are watching this live. So Darren, welcome. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for inviting me. I didn't know. I've never been invited to a podcast where I knew ahead of time I would be the referee. That's great. I need to change my shirt, have some stripes here, but I love you two, and I love watching you talk.
If that's what you want to call it.
That's a different definition, but anyway. So thank you for having me here. Yeah, so many times we see people who are great presenters, and we sit in the audience and think, wow, they're amazing. I wish I could be that good.
Right.
And what most people don't understand is that great presenters aren't born, they're trained.
Yes.
So they're not born. I mean, there is that 2%. And I hate them too. But the natural born orators, there are that 2%, but most people are actually trained and they have to learn certain skills, even though they might be good at talking conversations. You put people in front of an audience, everything changes.
Right. Absolutely. One of the things that I would love for you to share for people who are not familiar with you, your story is pretty incredible. I've heard your story directly from you through some of the events that I've attended that you were the host and the trainer, and it's an incredible story. I would love for you to share that with our audience because I'm sure many people may find themselves in similar scenarios in their life.
Well, thanks. I've been an entrepreneur since I was young, since I was in college. I went to business school. I went for the American dream, and I bought a Subway sandwich shop. And I thought, yes, I am going to own 10,000 of these. and I couldn't even get one to work. And if you don't know, back in those days, this was in the 90s, Subway had a 98% success rate.
98%
out of 5,000 stores.
Really?
Wow.
I had to really screw up to be in that 2%. And yeah, so I was living at home with my parents. I was able to sell my shop at a loss. So I had this huge business loan. I had my loans from college, and I was working part-time as a telemarketer, just trying to like figure my way. What am I going to do about this? And one of my buddies gave me this motivational tape of Brian Tracy, a great motivational speaker. And listening to this tape, driving down the road at the lowest point in my life, he asked the question. He said, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail?
I love that question.
Yeah,
What would
absolutely.
you dare to dream? And in my head, this answer from nowhere was, I would be a comedian.
Really?
What? Like, I was never funny growing up. I was never told you should be a comedian. It was just, if I look back into my life, where did that come from? When I grew up, I remember being like 8 years old at a holiday function with all my family, classic Polish holiday, at the kids' table, and my cousin and my brother were hysterical. They always had everybody laughing. So it was such joy. They were recapping Saturday Night Live skits, Steve Martin routines, and everyone was laughing. I remember I loved it so much. I loved just enjoying watching people enjoy. And I remember standing up and throwing out a punchline. And I hushed my whole family. And I slid back into my little chair and said, I will never, ever try that again.
You should have taken that advice, Borah.
Then you wouldn't be here because I'm carrying you now.
Oh, my.
Drop. So even after, so basically that was one of those gut punches. That was one of those straight to the jugular.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I was done. Okay, it's not for me. That's okay. I'll work on something else. I was always, quote unquote, the nice guy.
Right.
And so fast forward to 1992, when this question came to me, I thought, you know what? I'm at the lowest point. I have nothing to lose. So let me just try it once. So I literally thought about it. I told my friends and family this idea that I had, and they just kind of rolled their eyes and felt bad for me. And they're like, no. You could try a lot of things. You went to business school, do something in business. And I said, no, I got to try this. I'm at the lowest point. I got nothing to lose. So I decided that when I told my friends and family, they compared me to Jerry Seinfeld. Someone just thinking about it to someone at the top of their profession, which isn't fair, but I get it. It's human nature.
Yes.
So I said, you know what? Let me ask someone who has been there and done that. Let me ask a comedian, someone who is in it, doing it. So I had never been to a comedy show in my life. So I went to this little comedy club in Worcester, Massachusetts, near where I lived. And I went up to the headliner after the show, and he seemed quite approachable. And I walked up to him. I said, hi, my name is Darren. I want to try this. What do I need to do? And he asked me a question. He said, are you funny? And I said, no. And he said, good. And I'm like, good? What do you mean good? And he went on to explain that people who are naturally funny, people who are funny around their friends and relatives, he said that's one skill set. But he said if you handed that person a microphone and put them in front of a room of 100 strangers, they couldn't make them laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but that skill set can be learned. Like,
interesting.
He just handed me an ounce of hope.
Right.
And sometimes
You just handed everyone else an ounce of hope, too.
That's-
If you
Absolutely.
really don't know it, but you really did, because some people are thinking, man, I've had that experience. There you go.
Amen. So I asked him for advice, and he said two things. Number one, and this I believe applies to everything, but I wasn't thinking about it that way. He said, number one, you need to get the book. I'm like, book? There's a book about stand-up comedy? Well, of course there's a book about everything, but I never thought of it that way. So whatever you want to learn, whatever challenge you have in your life right now, get the book. Who's the expert that has the information that you need? Because obviously, if you knew what you knew, you wouldn't need, and it wouldn't be a problem, it would be a task.
Right.
So number one, get the book. So he told me about this book, Stand Up Comedy, The Book by Judy Carter. And if you don't know her, she's trained a lot of Saturday Night Live cast members. She's got many books now, but get the book. Okay, I didn't understand, but get the book. He said, number two, you need to go to amateur nights. Watch an open mic night where other people who are just starting out. Well, duh, when I told my friends and family, they're comparing me to someone at the top of their profession. If you're learning something new, don't compare yourself to someone at the top of their profession. Learn from them, be inspired by them, ask them the habits, ask them the resources to get, but don't compare yourself. It's not fair. So get the book, and compare yourself to someone else who's starting out, someone else who has that same challenge. So on Sunday night, I went to this little comedy club called Stitches in Boston. It's about an hour outside of Boston is where I live. So I drove to Boston Sunday night, Stitches. I walk in the comedy club. Again, only my second comedy club in my lifetime. And you could smell the stale beer. You could feel the sticky floor as you walk through. And I watched these people go up for their very first time. And ladies and gentlemen, they were horrible. And I immediately thought I could do that. That inspired me because I knew I could be at least that bad. I was like,
Right.
that's nothing. Like,
That's
okay,
you, Stormie. Yeah, that bad.
I lived through a lot of those cricket jokes. When I threw out a punchline, we would say, "Hear the ceiling fan," but crickets. But anyway, I studied for 2 months. I got the book. You know, I followed the directions. Sometimes as adult learners, we ask, like, what's the book? And then we get it, or we don't even get it, or we read it and we still think, I know better than that. Well, shut up. If you knew better, you wouldn't need the book. You know, so we're out to prove that we're right and we know more than the authority.
Right.
So I got the book. I studied it. I went through the exercises. In fact, some of the jokes I wrote right from that book the first time, I still use 20 years later.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the subway joke was written right out of that. I used it in my world championship speech. And anyway, so I got the book. I went to Stitches every Sunday night to get re-inspired by watching horrible people. And then it was April 26, 1992, Stitches, Boston, Mass. I went up. I brought 23 of my friends to make sure I didn't chicken out. In my whole life, I've never ever had this kind of courage. So I knew me. I knew I would chicken out. So I told my friends, I'm like, you got one job. I'm going up tonight. I don't care if I die. I don't care if I bomb, but I'm going up tonight. And another thing that I had learned, this is interesting, and Stormie, you probably don't know this part of the story because I know you've heard it several times, but I usually don't tell this part, is that at that time in my life, I was dating a woman who is in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went to AA with her to support her. And I learned so much wisdom. But what I really learned was when I would go out with my friends, I would go out to drink. And when I saw these new people going up, I saw all the new people would drink in order to have the guts to go up for their first time. So they would go up with a buzz on and they wouldn't be present. And I tell you, one of the best decisions I've made in my life is I said, I'm going to do this clean and sober. I'm not going to do what I see all these people doing, which I thought was a mistake. I said, it's going to be me. It's going to be real. It's going to be raw. But I'm not regretting because I'm not doing this a second time.
Right.
I was committed to not do it a second. I'm like, this is too overwhelming. So I went up. As you do know for the story, I was so nervous. I was shaking that my hands and what I was saying wasn't doing the same. Like they were not in sync at all. And so I was telling this little joke about Dr. Robert Goddard, who had launched the first rocket in history in my hometown. And I said the rocket took off and it went vertically.
That's
And
to
for
the
those
side
of
is
you-
not vertical.
Yeah, for those of you listening and didn't see the visual, my hand went horizontally. And at that instant, and this is why I think the not drinking and being sober was so important, because in that instant, I felt the pain. And I just reacted, and I said, shoot. That's not the word I used that night, but I said, shoot. And then everybody started laughing. And that was the only laugh I got that night.
Borah, you get those laughs when you cook.
You know what? You got me on that one because you're so right. I burn rice, okay?
And so I walked off stage. This man put his arm around my shoulder. He said, don't worry, it's just your first time. And I remember thinking, don't worry, it's my first time. I said, did you see what I did? Dude, I got a laugh. No one told me I could do this. And so I walked off thinking I won, and everyone else is like, this poor guy bombed. And I'm like, no. If I take that 5 minutes of time, I had one thing that worked. If I could get rid of everything that didn't work and figure out how to reproduce the one thing that did,
right,
I could do this. And that one thing that did was I reacted and I became real for 1 split second. I became authentic, and that's why the audience loved my reaction. Because they could feel the connection to reality, not me trying to say some lines and being all nervous. For 1 second, I became myself. And that was all I need. I was like, I'm taking every class that I could. I got every mentor that I could. I said, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to figure this out. And I never stopped.
You know what, Darren? Can I just jump in here really quick?
Sure.
You said something profound.
What if I said no?
Well, I would still jump
What
in.
if I pulled a Borah? Okay. Thank you for being polite and asking. That's very kind of you.
No, but it's interesting because I've heard this story several times through some of the events that I've attended. But you just said something that I haven't really picked up on that's really, really profound. And that profound statement that you made was the fact that 99% of what you did on stage didn't work. 1% worked. Is that a fair statement?
Exactly.
You focused on the 1% where most people would focus on the 99%.
Exactly.
Yes.
And at the time you were young, where did that sense of self-awareness come from? Because most young people, older people, I just think most people would focus on the 99% and forget the other part. So that's just an extremely profound statement, because sometimes I'll find myself focusing on the 99% instead of the 1%, and never really given it thought, but it resonated with me at this moment. Can you dive into that? Because that's profound.
I think it was because it was the dream. So I really thought, if I want to make people laugh, and I can't say where it came from, but I knew I was so focused in the fact that I knew I was clueless. I had no ego. There was no ego that night.
Right.
I'm not saying that it hasn't come back, and here and there I see it a lot. But having no ego, I think, allowed me to, I wasn't there to get a lot of laughs.
Right.
I was there for one reason, to get a laugh.
Gotcha.
And so it allowed me to focus on that one little success, because I knew that I was clueless. So one of the best assets I had was knowing that I didn't know.
Right.
And I think as adult learners, that's where we lose it a lot.
Right.
We certainly lose it there. We absolutely lose it there. Now here's a question that I have for you, because when you first of all, there's it's a twofold question that I have here. One is you talked about going on this journey, but I know that there was more that led you to this journey. Okay, you had the faux pas, the flop in front of the family, but then you went on this journey, and you think, okay, well, he's a comedian, and you're not a comedian. You're actually a phenomenal. I call you because I'm a business speaker, and I've trained with you. So I would say you're a phenomenal business speaker's coach. So I'm just curious if you'll tell us a little more about how this journey really happened, and how you transitioned from comedy night to where you are today.
How'd you become a world champion?
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
We're going to get to that.
No, we'll get to it now. Okay? I can't wait.
We're going to take a pause for a beat down, guys. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And so when I became the student, so I was all in. I'm going to figure this out. And I went to my mentors. I said, okay, what do I need to do? And one of the things that is my overriding mantra now is, they said, stage time, stage time, stage time. They said, Darren, if you want to be a comedian, the one thing you need to do is be on stage every single day. And I was like, wait a minute,
Right.
I want to be good when I go up. And they said, no, you have to go up to become good. You know, just like in marketing, you can't just put one thing out there and you win or you lose. It's like the adjustments along the way.
Right.
But you can't adjust something that you haven't put out there.
Oh, yes.
Right.
So true.
And that's the crucial part. Like I executed. And so I remember I was in the back of a comedy club with Vinny, my mentor, and I had been doing it for about a year and a half. And I was maybe getting 3 or 4 laughs in 5 minutes. And I was happy with that. But that's still horrible. But there was growth. And I watched this guy go up his very first night. And it was his open mic night. And he crushed it. And I remember just, and I turned to him,
The
and
sigh of defeat.
exactly. I'm like, am I wasting my time? Was my family right? And so I turned to Vinny and I said, Vinny, how do you know who's going to make it? Am I wasting my time? And he said, Darren, that's a simple one. He said, the person who will make it is the one who keeps going.
Right.
That's
he said,
powerful. That is so powerful.
It's his first night. Like, come back next week when his buddies aren't here and he's not having that magical night, and you see it will not be that good.
Right.
So one of the big problems is we have a huge instant success, I've seen that kill a lot of comedians, a lot of aspiring speakers even. They have that great speech, that great presentation, and then they carry that with them to their next one, and they expect that even though everything lined up perfectly. So anyway, so he turned to me, he said, Darren, I see you've been working hard. I see you've been taking that stage time thing to heart. I'm going to give you 5 minutes of stage time wherever I play. Now, he's a headline comedian. He plays the real shows. I'm still doing open mic nights in the back of a Chinese restaurant with 6 people in the room, 3 of them drunk and 3 of them making out.
Three of them making out?
Yeah. Deborah, how did I know you would appreciate that visual? And you would stick on it.
Did you just call me Deborah?
Yes,
The
he
Borah.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, no, let's go with Deborah.
Oh.
Okay. I'm just going to move out of swing distance. Borah, I apologize. I accept responsibility.
There you
go. So he offered me this, and this was huge. But then he got me, turned to me, leaned in, and said, but if you ever turn down stage time, I will never help you again.
Wow.
And that was when everything changed in my head. So think about it. If you're in sales time, FaceTime.
Sure.
You know, and so now I lived in the fear that he would find out that I turned down stage time.
Right.
And that's the habit that I created that got me here. In fact, to get back to your question, through when you're at the beginning of your career, nobody wants to give you stage time because you're horrible. Mm-hmm. So where do you find it? So there's only 3 or 4 open mic nights in the Boston area. So I'm sitting at my little desk at Bose Corporation, my little day job, and this newsletter comes across my desk about this thing called Toastmasters. As I'm like, Toastmasters? What's that? I start reading. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Here's a place I could get stage time during the day. Comedy clubs are only open at night. I could fail twice a day. Woohoo! So
Twice a day.
So I walked into Toastmasters, and there was maybe 12 people there. So a small corporate club.
Okay.
And I noticed something dramatically different from the comedy clubs right away. These people were warm, encouraging, and sober. So I immediately joined 4 Toastmaster clubs.
4
4
at the same time.
Because I wanted to quadruple my failure rate.
Interesting.
See, I would go to Toastmasters during the day and a comedy club at night. Toastmasters during the day, comedy club at night. So I listened to my mentors. Any day that you don't get on stage is a day that you don't grow. So 5 years into it or so, I started realizing I loved comedy, but when I was in a comedy club 5 and 7 nights a week, it drained my soul.
Right.
Literally, just being around, it can be fun going to comedy clubs still to this day. But now, if you're in it that much and you're around drunks and penis jokes, and sorry, can I say that?
You can
Yeah,
say
you
whatever
can
you
say
want.
whatever you want.
Okay.
This is Bizruptions.
Except Deborah.
Yeah, except Deborah.
Yeah, that's the D-bomb.
Them's fighting words right there.
So I realized that wasn't who I wanted to be.
Right.
So, but I'm thankful for 5 years in the comedy world because it built the foundation of what I do today.
Right.
So I learned the skills I need to learn in the hardest atmosphere ever. Now they're like, oh, well, be careful. These are salespeople, and they'll be drinking after dinner. I'm like, bring them on. I will ruin their field trip. Because I've been there and done that. So I slowly kind of segued my way out of stand-up. And when I found speaking, somebody said, oh, I'm a humorist. I found the New England Speakers Association. I was actually at a Zig Ziglar conference, and they were manning the table in the back of the room. And I said, I want to be a comedian. And they said, well, you should meet Rosemary. Rosemary's a humorist. I'm like, what's a humorist? And she went on to explain that basically it's a motivational speaker who uses humor to deliver their message. And I said, speaker? What's that? Here I am at a Zig Ziglar conference. I see a speaker, but I didn't know that was a profession. And so she went on to talk to me, and she said, explain what a speaker was. And I said, let me get this straight. So the audience will be sober. They want to hear a message, and they're going to pay me 10 times as much. Where do I sign up?
Right.
And so I got more into the New England Speakers Association and slowly segued out of comedy and realized I needed that training. And now I'm moving over. This is the world I belong in.
Right.
And
Wow.
it was wild. I went to my first NSA convention where there was 2,000 speakers, and I sat, and Captain Gerald Coffey was the motivational speaker that night. He was amazing. He was the opening keynote, and I remember just being around all these speakers, just the impact it had on me. And I remember walking out. My mom and dad were super supportive, but they didn't get it. They didn't understand. Whereas comedy and business, my background, you put those together, that's speaking. But I didn't know what was happening and what I was in. So I walked out.
So let me stop you. I'm sorry, Darren. I have to stop you. You just said something really profound right there. You just said that you just married two things that most people separate. And can you say that again? The two things
Yeah, so when I looked at my background, I had my own sub shop. I had my own little business while I was in college, a landscaping type business, driveway sealing. And though I loved business. And then comedy, if you take comedy or being funny and you marry that to business, like boom, those two together, that's a speaker.
Yes.
You have to you can't just be a speaker
Powerful.
and be great and you're going to book yourself. You're going to run a business. No, like it's a business first. So marrying those two, that's why I knew. So that night after that opening speaker, I'm bawling. I walked out to the pool and it was closed. I had a pad of paper and I wrote my mother a 7-page letter that said, for the first time in my life, I found home.
Wow.
I said, these are my people. They're messed up just like me. It's like, if you remember Rudolph, I don't know if you know Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, like for our younger viewers, but if
Our
you know
audio
Rudolph,
engineer over here is a young guy.
if you know Rudolph, for me it was like finding the island of misfit toys.
Wow.
Wow.
People who are messed up just like me, love self-development. I'm like, I'm going to be a speaker for the rest of my life. I don't know what it'll look like, but I just know this is where I belong.
Right.
So I'm thankful for the comedy background. It gave me the best training ever. But now, I'm a speaker. I train other speakers, but I learned it the hard way. And then...
So along this journey, and Stormie had alluded to this, which we're going to ignore Stormie, but so he was talking about this. You were talking about this speaker's journey just now, and along this journey, you're kind of a big deal, Darren. So tell us about some of these awards that you've won.
But back then, he wasn't a big deal. How did you become a big
well,
deal?
yeah,
And
how
what
did
does
you
that
become
mean?
a big deal?
You would know about that, Deborah.
I just want you guys to know I came just to watch you two duke it out.
Everyone
That's
says that.
That's the only reason I'm here.
We're waiting. They're waiting. One day I'm going to jump across this table. I'm telling you.
That means you'll have to get out your seat.
Exactly.
Ain't happening.
So it won't happen. You're right. You're right. What can I say?
I love
back
you
to
two.
this big deal.
Back to the big deal. So the big deal is sticking to the habit, stage time, finding a different place to use the skills and what I loved. And I realized I started because I love the ha-has. And along my journey, I realized now I love the ahas. So I went from focusing on the ha-has to focusing on the ahas and using humor as my medium to my message.
Right.
And the ahas, is that those enlightened moments? The information that you that you provide that's enlightening with a humorous touch.
Like when you teach Stormie wisdom.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
You see it on his face. You see it on his face.
Yes.
It's like, I used to live for the laughs. Now I live for the wisdom. The
Nice.
Planting those seeds of what I learned. From my experience.
Right.
There's so much I want to say, but I can't.
You can say anything. I
There's
can put
so
an
much
explicit.
I want to say, but my granddaughter might be listening to the show one
I
day.
can put
So
explicit on here just so you know. That's why we call this Bizruptions, because it's about the ish. And the ish is the caca, the poo-poo, the stink. Not talking about Stormie specifically, but
talking
all
about
of
her cooking. That's what she's
all of
talking
that.
about.
So you can say anything you want on this show, because I can put explicit. So let her rip.
So when I came over to Toastmasters and I got involved with NSA, the National Speakers Association, I realized there are people who are professional speakers. And so in Toastmasters, I work on the skill, and NSA, I worked on my business and the marketing side. And everyone's like, you got to write a book, you got to write a book, you got to write a book. I'm like, write a book? I'm dyslexic. I don't even like to read. So, but I got invited to write this book called Laugh and Get Rich with my mentor. His name was Rick Siegel. And I said, you know what? If I'm ever going to write a book two things. Number one, the subject, humor and business. The only two subjects I'm passionate enough about that I would want to get involved in the project. And number two, I knew at that point I had so much self-doubt. And I knew if I was accountable to my mentor, I would do what I needed to do to write the book. So because ironically, I wasn't funny and I wasn't rich when I wrote it, but I interviewed people who were. So I learned to create credibility by being the person who gathered the information, doing the interviews. So it gave me a platform to work on, to help people and build my business. And then fast forward a few more years later, one of my comedy mentors had passed away. And he said, Darren, I see you. You're trying to find that story that launches your career. He said, stop that. He said, instead, take the stories you already have and make them so good, someone will pay to hear them.
Wow.
And that was a complete twist of my mindset. And so the Toastmasters speech contest, the World Championship of Public Speaking, came front and center. And I was like, you know what? I need to honor my mentor who passed away. And I'm going to do this. But at the time, I was working my day job. I was marketing myself every waking moment. And I was speaking every time I could. The one thing, Stormie, that I wasn't doing was working on my craft.
Right.
And so I used the contest to force me to get better at my speeches, at my stories. So Craig Valentine, fellow world champion, has this brilliant quote. He says, if you want to master peace, you have to master the pieces.
Ooh.
Oh, got it.
That's
Yeah,
deep.
it's a great foundational phrase. So I took, if you look at my 1 hour keynote, let's say it's a level 5 out of 10.
Okay.
And I pull out one main story and I work on it, and make that one story a 9. And I put that back into the 5, the overall, it's going to up the average of the whole piece.
Right.
You know, so that one piece is going to make the whole speech better.
Right.
Sure.
And so then I pulled out another one. I worked on it, and I kept winning. And then I found out the Toastmasters contest went to the World Championship. I'm like, what's that? I just thought it was like a district thing, like my state. I thought it was just a state contest.
Oh, wait a second. So this world champion thing, it starts off, at a local club level, then
Yes.
it goes district?
Yeah.
For those that aren't familiar with Toastmasters, can you share
Sure.
the steps that you went through?
Yep. It's actually 6 levels of the speech contest. Now, I joined not to win. I joined to work on my speech.
Okay.
To work on my story for my keynote speech.
Right.
If I got a trophy, well, that's nice. I'm working on my career. And for other Toastmasters, if you're a Toastmaster listening, the intention is important. If you're just trying to win a trophy, all right, that's ego. That's about you. That's not about learning how to impact your audience. So there's Toastmaster clubs around the world, 300,000 Toastmasters, 8,000 clubs. So first level is you win your club.
Okay.
And then if you win your club, you compete against other club winners in what's called your area.
Okay.
So then if you win your area, you compete in what's called a division. So that's area winners. And then the division winners compete in the district. So that's the 4th level of the contest.
Okay.
So here in Nevada, that would be like the state of Nevada.
Okay.
Okay. And then you win that, you become a semifinalist. So now that brings the total number around the world down to 100.
And it started with 300,000?
Well, about 35,000 people
Are competing.
compete.
Okay, 35,000. Now you're down to 300.
Down to 100.
Down to 100. Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's the semifinals. So the semifinals are at the international convention in August, and there's 10 contests of 10 people.
Okay.
So that's the semifinals. So that happens like at our convention in a few weeks on Thursday. The 10 winners become the finalists in the World Championship of Public Speaking. So the 10 winners become the 10 finalists, and then they compete on Saturday in front of 2,000 fellow Toastmasters.
Wow.
And there's 21 judges sitting there just waiting for you to mess up. And anyway, so in 2001, I was fortunate enough to win the Toastmasters World Championship of Public Speaking.
So you won against everyone?
Against everyone.
35,000 down to 1. Or
Down
30
to
plus. That's
yeah,
incredible. Incredible.
Wow.
Especially for a kid who was afraid to go on stage that very first night, who was not funny, had no stage presence, and there was only God and 10 years of persistence could make that happen.
Wow.
And
so,
you were not only the kid who wasn't funny, but you also, I remember reading in your bio you talking about feeling invisible and some of the things that happened, and you were the kid who I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna be transparent. You were the kid that me and my friends used to beat up.
Yep.
You were that kid.
Yes, and thank God you were socialized that you won't beat me up today.
And
well,
then
somewhat.
you went on, and you exactly socialize, as long as you don't call me that D word. But so you went on to be number one from that kid who was basically kind of the outcast, if you will, to be politically incorrect. The outcast.
In high school, my brother was like a superstar athlete, still has records at my high school. My sister was like summa cum laude, like super smart. I was just like the nice guy that the girl would break up with to date the bad boy. Stormie, you can relate.
He knows all about that. Sandra just felt pity on him.
Yeah. So I really felt like I was a nice guy, but everybody liked me, but I had nobody looked at me for anything.
Right.
And so I felt invisible my whole life. And it wasn't until all of a sudden I started making people laugh that, I remember being at a convention. The first time I got on a plane to go give a speech, I was 30 years old. And I did so much custom work to get to know the audience and lighten it up because I didn't have much content back then. And I just remember walking in the hallway and this woman after the speech, and this woman who was just in the audience, didn't know her. She just turned and looked at me and saw me and smiled. And that's when I knew I wasn't invisible anymore.
Right.
I knew that because of that effect I had on stage and I got people to laugh, that transferred over to me, and walking in the hallway, I wasn't invisible anymore.
Wow, what a feeling.
So how do you transfer, you were talking about transferring a feeling over and everything. So how do you take that same transference, say that you're in business and you're thinking, well, I'm in business. I don't need speaking. I don't really do anything. I'm not going to get on stage. How does this benefit? Because I know for me, it's made a significant difference in my business. But let's talk to some of the other professionals that are on that don't understand really the power that this has. You've dropped a lot of nuggets, but there's some significant power in having that presence where you can speak in front of anyone.
Well, when you're on stage, you're the expert. Now, people are going to judge you whether you're a good expert or not, but when you're up there, you've got some credibility. Now, it's what you do with the credibility. And in 2001, I'll be honest, when I won the semifinals and I knew I was going to the World Championship, my ego started and I turned into Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I started lusting after the trophy. Precious. And so my coach, thank goodness, my coach Mark Brown saw that and reeled me back in. And this is what changed it. And this is where I realized whether it's a one-on-one conversation with a potential customer or client or in front of a larger audience, Mark said, Darren, this isn't about you. He said, you have the privilege of 2,000 lives for 7 minutes.
Wow.
What will you do with that?
What will you do with it?
And that's when it changed, that I had that opportunity to not be invisible anymore, to be something, but it's a privilege. And even if you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody on a plane that you're sitting next to, you have the privilege of helping them. If you help them, or they know what you do and how you help people, they're more likely to want to engage with you.
That's true.
But we've got to have that story down. We've got to have that transformational story down. So I know I can open a conversation, even though off stage I'm a hyper introvert. In this case, I'm more like
a hyper introvert.
Yes.
Never heard that one.
I don't even look at my own shoes. So when I tell people a little bit of my story, I said, look, I was someone who I became a comedian even though I wasn't funny. People go, what?
Exactly.
But that's how, we've got to all have that hook. So now when you're on stage, if you get the ability, even if that's a local Chamber of Commerce meeting or something, you have people there, what are you going to do with that privilege? Are they going to walk away thinking, wow, I need to learn more from them?
Right.
Wow, they gave me some good nuggets. That's what's going to, when you get that opportunity to influence, And every conversation, every presentation, it's that opportunity to influence. If you don't deliver, or if you make it all about you, or you come off of that salesy person and your intention is not there for the audience, whether it's a one-on-one conversation,
right?
They can sense it. They can smell it. That's why TED Talks, one of the reasons TED Talks, good ones, because there's a lot of horrible ones,
Yes.
they're talks. They're a conversation. They're not a performance.
Right.
So the ones that go viral are the ones that people find value and they want to pass on to somebody else. So the same thing, they get that 18 minutes. What are you going to do with that? So now that 18 minutes, if they're in front of 500 or 1,000 people at that live TED Talk, well, they do something good and people can sense their intention for them and they like it. And it's a good new idea. They're going to pass that video on. They're not going to pass it on. You know, a lot of speakers, I want to give a TED Talk. I want to give a TED. About what? How are you going to help us? Like, who, earn the right to have the privilege of that stage.
Oh, I love that. Earn the right to have the privilege. Mm-hmm. And that's what most of us miss is within the journey, us earning.
Exactly.
That earning stage. We miss that because we're in a microwave society where we, for some reason, feel that we're entitled. There's no such thing as entitlement. You earn it. You get what you must have, what you demand. I demand you to get out, Stormie.
I think if there was something called a TED Balk, you'd be perfect for it, Borah.
Oh, my.
Just saying. No offense.
No, okay. Then it's okay. I thought we were going to have to go outside. See, we have a thing. It's ridiculous when people say these things and then they say no offense. That makes everything fine. So the whole show is based upon
heart.
Exactly. Yeah, bless her heart. Yeah. So the whole show is based upon this. You say whatever you want to say. No offense. It's a disruptor. This is Bizruptions. So it's ridiculous when you say something, you insult someone, or you criticize them, and then it's no offense.
It's kind of like, let me be honest with you.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Exactly.
So if we look at every conversation as a privilege,
right,
and we look at every conversation as an opportunity to influence that we earned, like so many speakers, I want to be a speaker, I want to give a TED Talk. Why should we listen to you? What have you done? What have you created? Mm-hmm. And that was one of the first questions that was posed to me early on when I was at my first NSA conference. I'm like, I don't know, lady, that's why I'm here. But that question helped me see what my value was. Mm-hmm. I was watching, my favorite movie is Rudy. So I was watching Rudy
I love Rudy.
over the weekend. And then I kind of did a little research on the real story behind Rudy. And what was fascinating is the guy who got 3 touchdowns that day in the same game. By the way, you can find on YouTube the actual play that he actually did. It's black and white and
wow.
But it's so anticlimactic because it's just a play where a guy tackles someone. But it's the real play. But
right.
Anyway, they do an interview with another guy who was the star of the game who got 3 touchdowns, and he's like, I don't get it. He goes, I got 3 touchdowns. He got 1 tackle. But here's the lesson. With that 1 tackle, he realized he had a story. He went and literally stalked the writer Piazzo, I think his name is, who wrote the thing, and literally got the story made. But he was so persistent to get his story made. Ironically, I don't know if you know this, but he did it because he wanted to be a speaker.
Really?
Yes. That was his motivation, because he was inspired by Rocky, by Sylvester Stallone, who wrote the script in 3 days. And he was inspired by that. He said, all right, so let me back up a half a step. Rudy is my favorite. So Rudy, after Notre Dame, he's sitting in the audience at his company, and they had brought in a motivational speaker. The speaker's up there, and he realized this guy got paid to come give a speech. What? And he walked up to him after and said, I want to do what you do. What do I need to do? And the speaker, I don't know who the speaker was, but asked him the question. He said, well, what have you done? Why should anyone listen to you? And that got him to go think about his story. Even though he was never a famous football player, his story of just getting to play that 1 play is inspiring. So he thought if they could make a movie out of that, it would be easy for me to get booked as a speaker.
Wow.
I don't recommend that marketing plan, but it worked.
It worked. It certainly worked for him. Yes.
I've got so many questions if that's all I need to do. So you're saying, after the show, can I meet with you, Darren? Because I've got a great story. I work with the Borah every week. And people
That's inspiring.
That's inspiring, isn't it?
And you have no black eyes.
No black eyes. I survived.
Not right now.
Wow.
Not
Okay.
right now.
Makeup. Yes, you
Makeup.
survived.
There you go. There you go. There's just a wealth of information, and I don't know if as you're talking here, if people are grabbing the nuggets that you are dropping, but you are just
thank you.
there is just all over the place, all of this information. So my recommendation is, if you're listening to this, listen to it again and again, because he has just dropped valuable information on no matter what journey you're on.
Stormie, she's a
Absolutely.
lot nicer than you described her. She actually cares.
Another
Thank
person
you.
moved over to the Borah bandwagon.
And they all do. Thank you very
I'm
much.
going to start calling you Deborah Gullum Stott. That's exactly. I'm
You
putting
know,
all three of those
yeah.
together.
But thank you for that. But here's where that comes from, and I really do appreciate it. Here's where that comes from. I look at whether it's a podcast, whether it's a TV, whether it's a live audience, I still go back to Mark's question. I know that you guys have an audience. I know that I have to set my intention to give the best of what I have in that allotted time.
Yes.
And that's where it comes from. I believe it's about intention, and people can sense it. And that's what makes or breaks. That's what builds or destroys your business, your marketing, your integrity. And I really think it comes. So I'm thankful to my coach, Mark Brown, who asked me that question. I'm thankful to myself because I focus on that question.
Right.
Every time I get the opportunity.
And it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's very obvious.
Now, let me ask you a question in regards to that. Our audience.
Me or Deborah?
Forget her. What's her name? Oh, my bad. There's a lot of people who are listening to this show and the podcast, and our audience is primarily consists of entrepreneurs and business owners and salespeople and people that are in the business community.
Coaches. And
Coaches, you've
speakers.
shared a lot of information, and I'm sure there's some people within the audience that after listening to you, they're going to want more. And I know a lot of your programs are really designed for people that are speakers, but I've gone through many of your programs and I apply them to not necessarily the world of speaking, but I apply them to my daily life. So what could an entrepreneur or a business owner, or what could they benefit by whether, taking one of your live courses or even your online university, which is awesome? Kind of share what you've got going on there, because I think it's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you. Thanks. All right. I'm going to be nicer to you now.
There we go. There we go.
You don't have to.
No, so
Make sure he pays you at the end.
if you give presentations, I have a website called the Top 10 Speaking Mistakes. So it's 10 videos. It's free. You can check it out. If you have a fear of public speaking, I have fearofpublicspeakingcourse.com. Again, that's free. You can go and check it out.
So the first one, top
10 speaking mistakes.com.
Okay, and we'll have these links on the Facebook
Yes.
page. We'll also have them on our Bizruptions page as well.
And then if you want to build your business using speaking, check out stagetimeuniversity.com.
Okay.
So I have live events that you and Deborah have been to.
Yes.
And Deborah has disrupted, which in a good way. And she's
Yes,
staying
I
true to
have.
her brand of this podcast. And then I have my online university. So
Okay.
you can learn either live or online. But I love what I do, and I'm adamant that I want to help people. And I'm still learning. I'm still a student. Like, I come to your events because I know that marketing has changed.
Yes.
Right.
And so I look at it that I'm kind of an old school marketer, and I'm realizing the past 2 years it doesn't work that way anymore. But you guys stay on top of it. So here's my new mantra. Old school needs a little new school, or I'm going to be out of school.
So true.
So, and by the way, that little phrase and the one that you love by Craig Valentine, masterpiece, you have to master the pieces. Those are what we teach. They're called foundational phrases.
Okay.
They're 10 words or fewer. They have rhythm to them. So one of the things I will tell you, if you're an entrepreneur, you should have 1 or 2 or 3 foundational phrases that you can drop on your website or in conversations. So those phrases didn't just pop in. I sat down and created them. And I said, okay, I'm trying to take this idea, this sound bite of wisdom, and put it into a phrase. So I use rhymer.com, RHYMER, and take the phrase and I want to make it sticky somehow. So those aren't just happening. That's part of my marketing, is creating that. But most people won't take the time. But if you're going to drop them in a sound bite or something, that's what makes them sticky.
Sticky.
And if you're an entrepreneur, we've all had those moments where our business is challenged and we're literally in the back of our head, I should just get a job. We've had those moments.
Right.
Right. Well, but it's the truth.
That's like the demon. No.
Yeah. Well, it's no, but we got to be real.
Yes,
like
we
you're
do.
saying,
We do have to be real.
Those
That's a joke.
thoughts come up. Okay, they have them, but now you've got to go and you got to be a sponge again. You're like, I got a new problem, a new challenge. Let me get the book. It goes right back to, let me get the book. There's a new challenge, but there's somebody else who's overcome that. That's why I'm going to you guys for marketing, because that's the new focus. I'm like, I got to change my strategy. So get the book and then find out what's the important habit. What's that habit?
Wow.
And tell us your book again.
Books.
Laugh and Get Rich.
Okay, Laugh and Get Rich. Where can we get that?
Amazon.com.
Okay, and we'll have a link.
Or on DarrenLaCroix.com, either way. And then my other one is The Speaker's Edge, which is on DarrenLaCroix.com and Amazon.com.
Okay.
Wow.
We'll put some links on there.
I just came up with the foundational phrase. I'm excited.
Borah no Mora.
What Borah don't know is I'm the king of this show. Ooh, that's our new tagline. That's it. Moving forward.
We're going to give you that one, Stormie. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
We'll put that up with a picture of him with one black eye.
One black eye, that's right. And with me taking off my gloves. Yes, definitely.
You guys are fun. I really have to say that.
Thank you.
You got great energy.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And we realize we had to make a difficult decision in the beginning. We have great information. Both of us are, despite me not wanting to give him credit, we're both very knowledgeable in business and in marketing and in business strategies, things like that. And for me, social media, Stormie can't spell social. So,
Or media.
Or media. So we realized when we started this show that we had to figure out what our demographic, what our audience was. And our audience is the individual that they're probably grinding most of the day throughout the week.
Right.
But they know that they need to stay in the perpetual student mode. So ours is giving the information that they need, but allowing them to laugh some and to release some of the stress and those endorphins, to the happy endorphins. So the things that make them feel good, along with being able to learn. And we know that that's a specific audience. And like you said, when you prepare to come onto a show or something, I appreciate that, because that resonated so much, because that's what we have to do when we're looking at this. We have to provide just enough information, but we also want to give a release, because we know that the people that are really going to align with us, they're grinders. And they okay, I got to stay in that mode, but I need some release.
And as entrepreneurs, we've got to remember that we're not alone.
Right.
We're not alone, even though we feel it at times. That's why I love what you're doing. And we got to realize there's other entrepreneurs going through the same crap we are, and we need to lean on each other, or we're never going to make it.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
true.
And there's going to be times when we're up, and there's going to be times when we're down. But
Yes.
that's the life we chose.
Right.
So we might as well be together with other people who have similar challenges and have overcome them. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I just want to throw a plug in here. So Stage Time University is one of the websites that Darren owns that he brought up just a moment ago. And Stage Time University, I don't think he's given it enough credit here on the show, because it's a great website. You need to check it out. There's tons of resources where they've done recordings on some of the classes. And even though the presentation on the website makes the information seem it's designed for people that want to be public speakers or professional trainers, there's information in there that I use every single day of my life.
Absolutely.
I have to. I work with Borah. So there's some valuable information. And if you have a Borah in your life, let me tell you something. Oh my gosh, it's invaluable.
Everybody should have
StageTimeUniversity.com. Definitely check it out.
Yes, I would concur with that, and I've taken the information that I've learned from being in your trainings, and I've used them on stage and off stage.
Right.
And as funny as recently I was watching someone speak, and they did a thing where, and I think it was Craig, I don't know if it was Craig or Ed that taught this, and they were talking about they were here, and then they went over to the other person and how you go back and forth. And I was watching them, and I was like, hey, you're talking as the other person. You're supposed to be back here. Some of the things and I didn't realize I had learned that much, but all the things that I had learned. And Stormie, everybody deserves a little Borah in their life. Thank you.
Okay, Deborah. So if you enjoy today's show, one of the things that will help us help other people enjoy this show is to rate and review us. Find us on the iTunes store, rate us, review us, share your thoughts. Those thoughts are extremely valuable to us because it gives us the feedback to find other great guests as we had today, because this was an incredible show today.
Yes.
And you can do that and definitely subscribe to the show. You have to go to the iTunes store. It's Bizruptions, Bizruptins, IONS. That spelling thing again kicked in. For those of you that are listening now on the Facebook Live, because this is recorded live in a video, but definitely subscribe to our show on the iTunes store or wherever you get your podcast, and be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share the love with others.
And if you didn't like the show, just shut up.
Yeah.
Just say that.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, just rate it on to Borah instead of Stormie, that's all.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Darren, for being with us today and for sharing such valuable information. And as Stormie had said, that there's so much more that we could talk about and we could go into. We could just keep this going for the next couple of hours. But of course we cannot. So we will most likely have you back on the show.
I'd love to.
Definitely.
Yes, we will have you back
to.
on the show, and thank you so much for sharing from your heart and such valuable information.
Sweet.
And with that being said, we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.